Hey, welcome to our podcast. This is our inaugural podcast. We're just going to talk about just kind of random stuff, and we're hoping to get some guests lined up for the future. So if you're interested in maybe appearing for a conversation about the inner workings of the multiverse with us, shoot us a message on our Eclectic Philosophies page on Facebook, or just get a hold of us. Most of you probably know our phone numbers. And you have anything to say?
Well, I'd like to do the, I would like to apologize in advance. This is kind of lengthy and just corporate bullshit, but we have to do the obligatory mention of all of our sponsors. Okay, so let's get started. So we're gonna start with here.
Excuse us while we just get settled in here.
Just out enjoying the beautiful weather. Thought it was a good day for a conversation.
I think this is a pretty contemplative spot too.
Yeah, it's good to get away from all the hubbub and busyness.
Yeah.
You know, busy bees everywhere. Good to get away and just be with your thoughts.
Well, one thing that has really caught our attention lately, and we feel is a pretty interesting subject, is this thing called novelty theory. And what novelty theory is kind of a way of looking at life in the universe from kind of a reverse perspective than people probably normally think about it. And it was an idea of Terence McKenna, who, if you don't know who Terence McKenna is, you're remiss and should do a Google search on him or something. He was a visionary of the 80s and 90s, and pretty much a modern day prophet. So yeah, do a YouTube search on him if you don't know who he is, but may he rest in peace. He was a great mind. Anyway, though, novelty theory. Basically what it's saying is that the universe isn't being pushed forward in time, but that it's rather being pulled forward by from the singularity at some point in the future. And what the implications basically is that novelty is something that is the universe prefers novelty. When after the Big Bang, when it all started out, everything was really simple. Not much change occurred anywhere in the universe for billions of years at a time. And contrast that with today, where every 10 years there's just pretty ridiculous changes in technology and advancement and progression, and a big key or interesting point is that humanity is really, we're kind of the standard bearers of novelty, because we've yet to come across anything at least on this planet, that is as novel as we are. Wouldn't you say that's kind of a general overview of it?
Yeah, kind of to further that would be like, just look at technology and medical science in general. It's increasing at an exponential rate. Stuff is just happening much quicker, and it's going to keep happening. And basically the premise of novelty theory is that one day in the not so distant future we will get to a point where in one day we have accomplished more than in the entire history of our civilization.
Yeah.
And some could argue that that's happening now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're definitely getting close to that, and I guess that day, or really, I think even that day can be broken down further into
Hours,
minutes.
seconds.
There will be that point in time, where
things are just moving too quickly and without any real conscious effort or thought. It's just, that's the new norm.
yeah,
Kind of like an analogy of water being sucked down a drain
mm-hmm.
and the spiral effect.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually one of the examples I remember McKenna talking about was because it's when you start talking about this, it brings up the question of free will versus predestination, and that's kind of a talking point for every religion and spirituality. But his example was it was like a bowl, or like a bowl with a tennis ball, like rolling around, like it's been spun inside of it, and there'll be some motion upwards, some motion downwards. It's not really set in stone. All the movements of it, and that could be like our lives. Like everything's not completely predetermined, but we do know that the ball's resting point is going to be at the bottom of the bowl eventually, right?
Yeah.
It's being pulled towards that.
The end result is still the same, regardless of what happens between now and then.
Yeah. It's like it's been set in motion, and it will eventually reach that point.
Yeah. Kind of, I don't know, something that somewhat relates to that I thought was pretty interesting, that conversation we were having the other day. We were talking about the individuality progression and all that stuff. I would probably butcher it and paraphrase it to hell if I were to try. So why don't you kind of talk a little bit about that?
I'll be rambling too, because it's just an idea that I had the other day when I was outside. But basically, it occurred to me that to think about, and it goes exponentially, grows more exponential the further we look back in time. Thanks, man. And but let's just, like, an easy example, okay, is like your grandparents or your great-great-great-grandparents, just a few generations ago, whatever. But they definitely didn't have as much individuality as we do now, and that's not to say that there weren't really intelligent, unique people back then, because of course there were, but today, I mean, if you just want to take culture as an example, like, look at all the art that we have today, like music, with all the different forms of media, like the internet, TV, you can even, fashion and just all that type of crap. But, and contrast what we have today, all of that, all of the defining little quirks of our culture, contrast that with the 1930s, 1920s, or you can even go even further back than that and it becomes more obvious. But they listened to, the same music, the same jazz, blues maybe. Everyone listened to the same music, everyone knew the same songs. You didn't come across anybody that really had different preferences in music. Everyone, there was only a couple movies. There was Gone with the Wind, that was everyone's favorite movie. It was the only movie. And I think it's inspiring to me that today there's just so much more out there. And it really gives people the opportunity to kind of carve out their own niche and really explore their individuality. And I think that even music, I think that's one of the best examples. Even today, with a lot of the crap out there that I don't appreciate, and even like, country or pop music that, it doesn't really have any artistic merit, but it's good that it's out there because it allows more of a diverse population, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it comes down more to like personal preference now, more so than in any previous generation. Like you were saying, the further we go back, the more evident it becomes. But it's people more have a choice of what their influences are and what kind of ideas are formed in their head about the surrounding world through music, movies, poetry, books, art.
Yeah.
Whereas way back when, you know, shortly after the printing press was invented, and before that, like, there wasn't very much selection as far as books go
Yeah.
and all that. And like you were saying with the music and stuff, like, while we may not appreciate a lot of the mainstream, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this, garbage that's out there.
Agreed.
It's good in the fact that even people who aren't real evolved in their music choices, or, you know, they don't like to break it down as much as
Sure.
we do, it's
Yeah.
there for them, and possibly a gateway for them to get into it and
Yeah.
start exploring more.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's something that they get enjoyment out of it, and it allows them to become somewhat of an individual, you know? Like, they break away from the group in some way. Like, this is who I am. These are my interests. That's a good thing, because
Yeah.
we want as diverse a population as we can. That's what novelty is all about. Like, you know, the harder it is to find two people that are exactly the same, then that, you know, the better that is
Yeah.
for humanity. You know, it bodes well for our species, I think.
Yeah. And it all comes back to that, you know, personal preference thing, because, you know, I characterize a lot of mainstream pop music, which I say pop loosely. I think pretty much any genre that's in mainstream now is pop to one degree or another.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I characterize it as garbage, but those people could characterize my musical taste as garbage
Yeah, they
just
could.
as easily.
They could, you know, and it's a slippery slope when we start getting into that. But you know, it's an interesting topic, but it also, I mean, we can also look at it from a different angle, and that, you know, there definitely is, without question, a direction that popular culture is taking, and it's obviously on purpose. It's part of our consumerist culture, you know, and I think that it is trying to the powers that be, I guess we can call them, they are trying to stifle individual progress, and I mean, it's better for them if everyone's in a herd mentality,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's listening to the same music and stuff. And I think that's why, on one hand, with the internet and the access to communication and information that we have today, there is more music and art and culture out there. But at the same time, there really is only kind of one brand that's being pushed down our throats through the mainstream media, you know?
Yeah.
The radios and the TV.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's evident that they're running out of ideas. Music is becoming so merged with pop and streamlined, and not really about, I mean, it depends where you look, but in the mainstream specifically, it's not so much about artistic statements and individuality anymore. It's about streamlining it and the bottom line and making money.
Yeah, and pumping those albums out year after year.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look at television, same thing. A lot of good shows. They're not so specialized anymore, so there's like not as many views. The ratings aren't as high on a lot of shows because people are spread out watching all this other stuff, and good shows get canceled.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's all being replaced with reality TV, which I use that term loosely. It's not really reality. A lot of it is very heavily scripted. Movies, you see it there. You see all these reboots and sequels and stuff. They're running out of ideas. That's all it is.
Yeah, they don't think there's an inclination for the big corporations that, you know, that run pretty much all of mainstream art. They don't want to take a gamble on someone's new idea.
No.
They very well, I mean, and there's few examples of new people coming in and starting a new franchise that's very successful, and the examples are pretty sad, because they're like the Twilight type of crap, you know, just really shallow, like there's no depth to it at all.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's definitely definitely a direction that they're trying to take things in, and it's just a unique like a unique time we live in now, because there's these other people out there, like independent people that are having their own ideas, have their own ideas for shows, for music, and they're out there. They are competing with the mainstream.
Yeah.
In well-funded shit, but it's still a struggle,
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think the trick would be to get more just average people to explore new ideas and look at some other shit that's not so mainstream. Like, turn off that Kardashian bullshit, because what are you gonna? I don't get what people take away from that. Like, isn't the whole point of media and art to like reveal something about yourself? You're trying to identify with somebody, and you're trying to like get some sort of a truth out of it,
Yeah.
And I think the reality show phenomenon is like, it's low budget for one thing, like, and it is scripted. Like, it's admitted pretty much. Like, they do have scripts, but it's real loose scripting, and they just put a camera in front of some vapid, vain personalities, and let all the teenage girls in the country just consume it up, because
Yeah.
it turns a profit.
Yeah, and it goes back to that's what it's all about. It's the bottom line. And I want to throw in a little disclaimer here. We're not trying to rip on stuff that people like, whatever.
Yeah.
To each their own.
Mm-hmm.
Personal preference is a good thing, and it's good to have all this diversified stuff out there for people to get into. But at the same time, it's also good to ask yourself, what am I really getting out of this? And I think the main hurdle for these independent studios and, as far as independent filmmakers, independent music production companies, all that goes, is that in today's modern world, it's so busy and convoluted with all this stuff. You got to go to work, you got to pay the bills, got to look after your kids and stuff, and it requires too much work for the average person to kind of siphon through all this stuff and find something they actually like or get something out of. It's a fine line,
To
that
parse
they're
through all
telling.
the banal crap that they're being spoon-fed. And yeah, it's a good point that you brought up, that we're not trying to rip on anybody or any interests, hobbies, whatever they have, But
Yeah, to each their own. Whatever.
yeah, I think that's
Not
kind of
for
the
me.
point too. Is that it's sad to see so many people, I guess, playing into the hands of a dynamic that I can clearly see that's going on in this country, in the world, really. But
yeah, all those shady dealings behind the scenes, money exchanging hands, and all these people with hidden agendas, and the corporate bigwigs who are pulling in all the profits for people buying into the stupidity. It is sad, and I find it interesting that one of the hurdles our society finds itself facing right now is that we have all this individuality, the progression of individuality, which you brought up and talked a bit about, but that art as a whole and in general seems to be stagnating.
yeah,
It's seems paradoxical, because we have all these people who are so individualistic compared to each other, but yet everything seems to be the same.
yeah, it does. That it's just it's hard to steer people away from what's so easily accessible, which is whatever is on the radio or whatever is on TV. And it is definitely a form of conditioning. And, I guess I wanted to bring up the Beatles, because I feel like that is a pretty inspiring example for, like we were talking about, like the trajectory of a group, of a person, of an artist, of an individual, or a group of individuals. They can start off, and what I mean by that is that it gives hope to all the vapid, kind of banal crap that we see out there right now, but we don't have to be too cynical about it, because maybe there will be progression from that.
Yeah.
And it's I think important not to write people off too quickly, because, and I'm by no means saying that I think that many mainstream personalities or artists out there right now will be like the Beatles, but as an example, look, they started off in the early 60s, you know, their music was real poppy, just real simple pop songs. There wasn't too much to it. It was like She Broke My Heart and Then We Got Back Together type of little pop upbeat songs.
Yeah.
Which I like. I like a lot of their earlier stuff, but it's just interesting to see how they progress. And they were only together for 10 years, and like look how far they came from when they were, I mean, those simple songs they started off with, and then over the course of the 60s, they really developed in one of the most progressive, groundbreaking artists of all time. I mean, the Beatles are up there with Bach and Beethoven, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot can be taken from their little journey that they had, and their evolution as people. I think their evolution as people was, I think that manifested itself in their music.
Yeah.
And in their art, because look at, like in 1967 with Sgt. Pepper's, and it's a total direction change, and their music took on such a progressive angle. And you know, there's a lot of things that probably contributed to that. They experienced, they were introduced to new ideas, new concepts, and they allowed that in, as opposed to blocking it out as a lot of people do, like Hindu teachings and psychedelic drugs. I mean, let's be honest,
Mm-hmm.
that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not the point, but the point is that they opened their minds to new ideas, and they really decided, oh, there was more to life, and they could get more out of the music they were making. And you know, I guess the rest is history, really.
Yeah.
From what became of that, what became of their willingness to evolve and to progress. And you know, I guess I would have the hope that a lot of young talent, so to speak, today might undergo kind of that same process, but who knows?
Yeah, yeah. That's not to say it's an expectation by any means, because we're talking about the fucking Beatles,
Mhm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the possibility is there. The possibility is there, and that's the main thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Not to judge too quickly, because before Sgt. Pepper's and before they started experimenting with their sound and with their minds, it was kind of, you know, just poppy, mainstream, regurgitated. It was good,
Yeah.
but it had all been done before.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they really started to push that envelope
Yeah.
with Sgt. Pepper's and subsequent works.
And look at how many people they influenced.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have the culture we had today.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
have
love
today.
them or hate them, the Beatles are to thank for pretty much all modern music.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have music as we know it. We wouldn't have a lot of the rock bands of the 70s and
Even
into the future.
Yeah, look how much they even influenced. There was that 60s wave from England, and then really the next revolution in art was out of the Pacific Northwest. It was out of Seattle. But look how much the Beatles influenced that. Like the Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. I've read interviews with all of them. They've name dropped the Beatles and some of those other British invasion bands.
Yeah.
That, you know, they inspired them and kind of opened the door that there could be another cultural revolution, and there was. And I think we're kind of waiting on the next one right now.
Yeah, I definitely get that sense that art in general, you know, like movies, music, etc., and so forth, people are clamoring, waiting for the next big thing, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because it's all just kind of stagnating and hitting a wall, and it's all been done before. It's also played out. It's all regurgitated
Mm-hmm.
and, corporatized and streamlined, and it needs something's got to give,
Mm-hmm.
and it will. It's just the question of what is going to catalyze that.
Yeah, exactly. What's going to be the catalyst there, and who's it going to be?
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of plays into the topic that we were talking about discussing of indoctrination and stuff. That's one of the hurdles that I think needs to be overcome
Yeah.
for this next wave to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like a good segue point here to another topic that we kind of wanted to talk about. And that's indoctrination into a mindset, kind of the average mindset, we'll call it, I guess, of, just average Americans, the average people. Like, there definitely is indoctrination at work and social conditioning from a few different forms. And I think the first form of this conditioning that we want to talk about was the education system, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, you got all these, well, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, lesson plans and
A
syllabus.
curriculum.
Yeah, and curriculum. It's like, it's all predetermined and laid out, and there's not really much place for independent thought and, conversation, really.
Mm-hmm.
To take place and discuss the real issues. It's all so laid out and planned and predetermined. It's basically a form of thought control,
Mm-hmm.
and we're being conditioned to not think for ourselves and think in a certain way through the education system.
Exactly, dude. And I don't want to give the wrong impression here. Like, I think teachers are probably the most underpaid position,
Yeah.
and the most, probably ranks right up there with the most important positions in the country, in the world. For any community, there needs to be a great education system, because that's the whole point of education, is evolving and progressing and learning about this ball of rock that we landed on. We don't really know. We're trying to learn, we want our kids to have a good education. But that's one area where, and along with a couple other examples we can talk about in a minute, but the education system, there really is I read a book a year or two ago. It's called The Lies My Teacher Told Me. I think it was written by some dude, I think James Lowen or something like that. I don't know. Look it up. It's a really great book. But it really kind of just articulated how it was all researched very thoroughly. He has hundreds of sources. How predetermined the education curriculum is in this country. Yeah. And the problem with that isn't so much that it's predetermined. It's just that it's so close-minded, and that there's not room for dialogue to spring up, which is always fucking bad. You always want to have dialogue to spring up, and ask questions. People in the education system in this country, people don't want young people to ask questions about, is this, are we doing everything right? Is there something we can be doing differently? There's just that, we kind of inherit that, that just, that worldview from our, from the previous generation,
Yeah.
I think it's the responsibility of every generation to evaluate the world they inherit and ask if this is really how we still want to operate. Because, and I mean, I don't know about other countries, but I know here in America that, education takes a real nationalistic tone.
Yeah. Oh, most certainly. And it's detrimental, really.
Oh yeah.
Because the system is broken.
Yeah.
If we keep operating under these old paradigms and
Mm-hmm.
Ideologies, it's destined for failure. We've
Yeah.
seen it time and again with the rise of great civilizations and their inevitable fall, and that's happening right now.
Without
What we
question.
can do now is change the way our education system runs, change the way our infrastructure is managed, change the way basically we operate as a nation, as communities, individuals. That all has to change because it's not working. It's going to crumble before our very eyes, and that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'd like to say about this whole education topic, and you kind of touched on it earlier, the teachers, it is a very undervalued position, and we're not here bashing on them because a lot of them have the best intentions at heart and do the best with what they have. But there is danger in having a laid out curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not necessarily their fault.
Oh, I agree that it's not their fault.
They are, in education, we're not devaluing that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a huge thing, but is the education actually beneficial? Is it the proper type of education that we want to instill in our youth?
Yeah, and the only critique I might have of teachers in general, and I even kind of cringe to say this, but apathy. I think that, I understand all the political side of it, that it's a job, and they need to pay their bills, and pay their mortgage, and they have kids, they need to provide for their kids, and so it becomes all too easy to just accept the role that they're given. But I think that if educators really just kind of cut back on the apathy a little bit and ask more questions and really kind of provoke dialogue, and I'm sure there are many teachers like this out there that are on that cutting edge right now, but
I mean, we had some.
yeah, we did.
We did have some teachers that I still to this day very look up to.
Yeah,
very much.
Out of all of them I've had, I'd say at least half were really good teachers.
Yeah, but there is, some of them, and maybe they've got things in their personal life, or maybe they just view it as a job, or whatever the case may be, but there is a level of apathy with some of them, not all of them, that must be overcome in order for these changes to take place, which are going to be necessary and vital to the direction that our country takes.
Yeah. If I could, before we were talking, but I think nationalism right there is the biggest problem probably with curriculum, because, well, here's an example. What's the first thing you learn to do when you send your kids off to school? What's the first thing your little kids learn how to do? Allegiance.
Yeah.
Now, if that's not inculcation into a cult mindset, then I don't know what the fuck is, right?
No, I totally agree. It's funny when put that way, but yes, I very much agree. It's
I mean, come on, man. It's got Third Reich written all over it.
Yeah, it does, and it's kind of almost like I don't know, worshiping the flag to an extent, which I think is dangerous, and most people, when they look at it objectively, would agree, I believe, that that's not something we should be doing.
Yeah, it's there's too much, and you can't, most people will frown upon you when you try to bring this up, but it's just too much of an emotional issue, I think. It's America, rah, 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 my great granddaddy died for this country, or whatever the frickin' case may be, but it is totally, it's all right, let's objectively, that's the key word. Let's look at this objectively.
Yeah.
You have your little kids with a whole bunch of other kids in a classroom, their same age, and they're being taught to what? I'm gonna put my hand over my heart, and I'm gonna pledge allegiance to a flag that it's not pledging allegiance to humanity. It's not like I pledge allegiance to love all humanity, peace for everyone. It's no, I pledge allegiance to this flag of this country, and and don't do it, and you're gonna get slapped. You're gonna get sent to the principal's office if you don't play along.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem, is because you got the teachers at the front of the class leading the damn charge.
Well, yeah, and I mean, back to what you're saying, about my granddaddy died for this country and stuff. That is a very touchy issue with a lot of people, and that's not to say that I don't agree. There are some great people out there who had that mentality, freedom fighters, and were doing it for all the right reasons. And you know, we have had lots of bloodshed of good people.
Sure.
But the problem is, and you see it at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God. Okay,
Yeah.
look at what our leaders are doing. We are not one nation under God. It's a farce. It's a farce. The whole fucking thing. They are taking this power and abusing it.
Yeah.
And what is the cost of our freedom? We're over in other countries, you know, robbing people of their freedom so that we can have ours. And that's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah, and well, even that right there is a pretense. We're robbing it, but not to have our freedom. That you know.
We can all have freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's funny in a way, even though it's really sad. But you know, I think that's the main goal, is to just stop this nationalism shit that we're in this nationalistic environment that we're raising our kids, because they're the next generation. And I mean, if we can stop it now, then you know, that'd be good, because there's no use. There's a lot of people, older people, even people our age probably, that are really set in their ways, and they're not gonna have this conversation. I mean, you start, because it's
taboo.
It's taboo, and it's too political, and they, you know, and it's like the rah 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 America, you know. But I mean, what can you say to some people that refuse to look at just like concrete facts that we could point to, that our nation is not doing? It's run by, who's it run by? It's run by corporations and international banks.
Yeah.
It's run by an elite class of people.
And these politicians that are supposedly running it are nothing more than glorified puppets.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't see that, if you cannot see that for yourself, then I don't know what else to do. You're listening to the wrong podcast, for starters, you know.
Yeah.
Go read some patriotic, you know, America's the greatest country in the world, let's go fuck shit up propaganda.
Yeah. One nation under God, you know, kill them all, let God sort them out, because that's clearly what Jesus Christ
what God
was
would
saying.
do.
Yeah,
of course,
totally.
Of course.
Totally.
Bathe in their blood.
Yeah.
You know, I command you in the name of Christ, spill the blood of the innocent. You know, that's what they're trying to achieve, and it's worked so far. But there are people who are waking up. The main thing is that it's not organized, or there's no set course of action. You know, people are kind of like, well, what do we do now? Yeah,
we're just waking up, you know, and we're kind of in that haze of like, well, shit, you know, how do we change this?
Yeah.
But, you know,
we're sitting on, you know, however many nuclear warheads are accumulated throughout the world, and everyone's like, holy shit, you know, what are we doing?
Yeah.
They're just waking up, oh, we're on the verge of destruction.
Yeah.
And the question remains, what do we do now?
Exactly. And
that's one thing that has to go. The nationalistic ideals.
Has to go.
To quote Doug Stanhope, you know, for those who are listening who don't know and aren't familiar with this bit, it's one of my favorites, is nationalism doesn't do anything but teach you how to hate a bunch of people you never met and take pride in a bunch of achievements that you had no part in.
Yeah, exactly. That's my favorite Stanhope bit too.
You know, fuck the French. If we hadn't saved their asses in 2 world wars, they'd be speaking fucking German right now.
Was that me and you, John? I remember you getting hammered the other night at the bar. I don't remember Gerding Krautz or whatever he says. It's great.
I checked my phone. I didn't see any texts from the French government asking for muscle on a project.
Or we could update that to be like, you know, Iraqi and all that type of shit.
Yeah.
Middle East. But, you know, another thing though, I was gonna say though, is, you know, we have like 100 military bases in like 120 countries. I mean, there's only 200 odd countries on the planet, so the United States has military presence in over half the countries on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't know that. People think, well, I guess Afghanistan and Iraq, but, you know,
no,
them fuckers attacked us on 9/11.
A lot bigger than that.
Yeah, it's a worldwide. It is an empire, and like you were saying before, I wanted to get back to that for a minute, because this is what happened to Rome. The Roman Empire, they fell from within.
They got spread too thin, basically.
Yeah, and they were corrupt from the inside, and the same with the British Empire. all their colonialism and bullshit, and their, you know, it's like, it doesn't, and that's no reflection of the American public, really, because there are a lot of great people
No, it's
here.
the 1% versus 99% argument.
Yeah, but they have control of...
But that elitist class does have control, at least as of now. They are vastly outnumbered. And, you know, talking like this, I might have some men in black suits showing up at my house, but if we so
Yeah.
chose, as the general public, if we got our fucking shit together and got organized,
Yeah.
we could overthrow that shit in a second.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I'm advocating for violent revolution.
No, peaceful revolution.
Because I'm not at all.
Peaceful revolution.
What I would hope for is for those people in the positions of power to have a change of heart. Although I agree that's very unrealistic.
Yeah.
You know, especially when their life's on the line and they're probably in all likelihood going to get their head blown out.
They're going to get Kennedy'd.
Yeah, they're just going to get murdered.
Yeah, that's
if
what
they
happened
don't keep up.
the last real president we had, and that's what happened to him. But, yeah, I mean, I could talk about nationalism all fucking day long, because I think it's so ridiculous. But, you know, it's coming up here, 4th of July, coming up here in about a month. I wonder how many flags we'll see. All these flags, by the way, that you're going to see on the 4th of July. Bet you most of them probably made in China. Maybe Vietnam. You know, you might get a few Bangladeshis, but I think that's a sweet irony.
Yeah, and I mean, like, kind of back to the whole thing about how we have military based in, you know, 120 countries and we're spread so thin. And I mean, like, let's talk about some more pressing issues right now. Not
gays are getting married.
Well,
sarcasm.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna go there. I was more talking about national debt.
Yeah.
And look at how much we spend on military funding. Or let's talk about world hunger.
Yeah.
These are arguably, and I would say even not arguably, more pressing concerns that if we just cut back, you know, 10% on our military spending, we could totally diminish that national debt. We could solve world hunger, but all in the name of, you know, controlling the oil fields and stuff while we hoard up all ours so when they run out, we still have the power. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it goes a lot further.
Oh yeah, that's not the only thing, of course, but that's one of the main resources that we have interest in other countries for.
You know, and again, it's hard to have this discourse openly.
Yeah, I think we're
people.
losing a lot of people as we speak. The further we go, they're just kind of checking out.
Yeah, you know, but it's the truth. I mean...
Oh, it's the truth, but just a lot of people don't like the truth.
I'll take a lot more of a hardline stance on the military budget and say cut it by fucking like 80% because we don't fucking need all that shit. Like, just building weapons. How much money do we spend on weapons just to go kill people? Like, are there any parents listening right now? Your little kid in school right now, how would you like it if a fucking drone comes over and just bombs them because there's supposedly some dude a block away that, you know, has different political beliefs than you do, you know?
And it sounds so horrific to us in our sheltered little American lives to hear things like that, but that is not fantasy. That is the reality.
Just murdering people.
For those people
where
we have a military presence in their country. That is the reality. And what we hear over here, yeah, you hear about civilian deaths and stuff, but I would argue that the numbers are very skewed, and the actual civilian deaths are much higher percentage than they let on.
Yeah, I know I mean, yeah, who knows, man? I don't know. I'm not over there, but the last statistic I heard for these last two wars in the Middle East, somewhere's over 100,000 people that Americans have killed. And, you know, like, I'm pretty sure that, like, most of them, over half of them at least, were civilians, you know, and that's widespread murder. That's Nazi shit. That's Mongol shit. Like, when are we going to learn from history? You know, it's sad, I think, that it's 2013 and we still are having this conversation, like, out by the river in some, like, conspiracy fucking environment, you know,
it's
but
a hideout.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, not that we have to, but that's kind of, I mean, you're not hearing it on TV, and, you know, I think a lot of it is, You can't even watch a goddamn Seahawks game without having military jets fly over and some moving rendition of the national anthem. We're gonna sing this national anthem with our hands over our hearts, and we're just gonna give thanks. You know? It's like, what the dude? Shut the fuck up, man. Let's talk about peace for humanity before we start, having this ironic sense of detachment where we can just praise everything that's done under the American flag. It's just great, and we're bringing freedom to these people.
Yeah.
And we're God's favorite nation, and God bless America, It's a cult. It's a damn cult,
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with, like, all the, throughout the course of human history, you've got horrible wars and acts carried out in the name of God. It's, like, essentially the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
And, so far there has been relatively little to no sweat off the average American's back as a result of this way of living, but it's coming. And imagine how quickly most people are going to change their tune when the shit hits the fan, proverbially. And, look at what's at stake. Civilizations have crumbled many, many times before. We've kind of kept on because they weren't as advanced. But look what's at stake. If our infrastructure crumbles and shit, we're going to revert back to the fucking Stone Age.
Oh, yeah. Overnight. And it's like, we can take an example. Look at Germany after World War I. Like, this is always poignant to me, but I remember seeing a picture from, I think it was probably the 1920s. Here's a dude that has a wheelbarrow full of cash, of whatever German cash currency at the time. A wheelbarrow full. I mean, it's stacked 3 feet in the air, just overflowing with cash. He was in line to buy a frigging like a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
And that's what's gonna happen, because
you can't even buy milk and 2 eggs with that.
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen to the American dollar. That's what's gonna happen to our currency, and it's gonna have profound reverberations throughout every fucking aspect of everyone's daily lives.
Yep.
And I'll tell you the reason, man. The reason is empire. The reason's not. I mean, it's very, very complex, and I wouldn't even fucking act like I have any real economic education, You're like, I really know all the ins and outs and the details of the economy, but it's simple enough to understand, really, when you look at the full spectrum of what's going on. It's about empire. It's about the United States of America being a frigging empire. And, that shit, it's going to catch up with us someday unless we change. And, like, right now, like, we have this great opportunity to be the ones that actually did become that,
beacon of light.
Yeah, the beacon of light. The shining city on the hill, as fucking Ronald Reagan said. But we can be, but it's not through empire. It's not through controlling people and murdering people and taking their resources and perpetuating some archaic social paradigm.
Or giving the banks and the elitist groups free reign to just print out money with no backing and stuff. It's really, well,
they're the ones that own the fucking government.
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly. That's the problem is all the corruption and stuff. Like, if we had an actual basis for the American dollar and everything was really based off of that, gas would be probably a hair under $1 a gallon.
Yeah.
Everything would actually represent that. But because there's so much inflation of all the money that's being pumped out there with no backing, then we see the inflation of the prices and the escalation of conflicts throughout the world, because these people are abusing their power.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's something to point out that it's a two-headed problem. Obviously, like we're saying that, 1%, I don't really know what the percent is, that's just the terminology right now. But the elite people that do run this and really have a total lack of a moral conscience about their actions on such a enormous amount of people, that's one aspect of it, and probably the most crucial one. But, the average people need to wake up out of this nationalism bullshit, and, I guess the thing to stress here, again, about pretty much the common theme in everything we're talking about is just have an open mind. Be willing to just listen to other ideas and, like, read some books about this shit. Learn about it.
Yeah.
So, maybe interest will something will spark in your mind, and you'll be like, oh, you know what, I do want to I want to leave a better future for my kids instead of the same one. Not the same comfortable one that, you might be familiar with, but a truly better one that has evolved, and we actually are, putting our time to more constructive things.
One with actual substance and meaning.
Yeah.
Rather than this materialistic bullshit that everyone's bought into and has become basically the goal of everyone in the modern world. That is the new religion, is materialism and consumerism.
Yeah. Hedonism.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no easy answer, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there is an easy answer, or that I have any answers. These are just important topics to discuss if we are to survive, which I think is the main fucking goal here.
Mm-hmm.
How much longer can we carry on under this same pretense? How much longer can things carry on under this established norm? And the answer is not much longer.
Not much longer.
20 years?
Yeah, how much? 20 years maybe? I don't
100
know.
years? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So I guess the important message here is that don't burden yourself with trying to come to answers, because nobody has answers. It's not important to have answers. We're not trying to fucking purvey some illusion that we have all the answers, that people need to listen to us. No, the important thing isn't answers. The important thing is to ask questions. Questions are the important thing. Curiosity. Ask questions. Questions are a lot more important than answers.
Yeah. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And not to be a stick in the mud here, but we are running short on time. We've got like 7 minutes left. So perhaps we move on to another topic, or again stress the idea that we're open to invitations.
Yeah, we want guests. This is kind of
this is for you. It's not for us. I mean, we get something out of it. It's fun for us to do this shit, but for the listener, and we want people to be a part of this. Anyone who's interested in what we're talking about, hit us up. Yeah, all 31 of you. I think that's a little gratuitous.
I said 3.
Oh, okay.
For all 3 of you out there, it's probably 2. It'll be us later listening to it. No, but really, I don't know what. We want guests, We want people out there to come talk with us about interesting things. If you have interesting things to say, then we want to be your friend.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about this kind of stuff. Or if you disagree with us.
Yeah.
We welcome that.
We welcome debate.
The main thing is that we're talking about these things. Mm-hmm. So, anybody who got some shred of like an aha moment out of this, or someone who's like, these guys don't know what the fuck they're talking about, get a hold of us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, what's our contact info again?
Well, you can reach us on the Eclectic Philosophies page on Facebook and just shoot us a message. Or most of you probably have our numbers if you have access to this podcast. Or you could get us on email, which mine is jcrass87@gmail.com, and yours is jholbrook10@hotmail.com.
Yep.
So, yeah, get a hold of us. We want to keep this thing going, but we can only go so far ourselves. So please help us continue this medium.
Yeah, and again, we're not gonna, we don't have to do a rehash of the type of stuff we're talking about. We want to talk about anything out there.
Yeah.
We're willing to, we want to talk about. This is like, we want to continue this, and to do that, we want to have conversations about pretty much anything that you could fathom,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of pointless to just rehash over the same shit over and over again. unless of course there are people out there who disagree and want to give us their spin on these topics. But mainly what we want is just interaction with other people. If you have other topics you'd like to discuss, or perhaps some art that you're involved in that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, basically anything.
Just get at us.
Get at us. And I don't know, do you have any last words?
Well, this has been real, and it's been fun. And I hope that there's maybe 1 to 10 people out there who enjoy this as much as I enjoyed putting it down.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say that this isn't, this is one time out of probably, thousands that we've just decided to bring a camera and kind of just record it for the fun of it. But this is the kind of stuff that we talk about all the time and with a lot of friends, and I think to get back to what we were saying before, though, just having dialogue is important. Just to fucking have a dialogue with people. Communication. We need to communicate as a species. And get at us.
Yeah.
Just let us know. We're a traveling podcast, so we can meet anywhere. Whatever.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to have a podcast, I just want friends.
Yeah, definitely. All right, stay real.
Bye-bye. Thank you.